Everyone ready? I'm going to go ahead and call this September 21st, 2020 meeting of the Whitefish City Council to order. Thanks everyone for attending this evening. We are under a statewide directive from the governor's office to wear masks and socially distance. I've noticed that several individuals in the audience are not masking. I would ask, unless you have a health reason for not wearing a mask, I ask that you please mask or I will adjourn this meeting. Can you please mask? Point of order. I haven't acknowledged you, sir. With that said, I'm not willing to put this council at risk for those in attendance that will not voluntarily mask when we are under a state governor's directive. With that said, I will not put those in the public that are attending and following the rules at risk either. So Dana, I would please ask that we schedule a remote meeting for Thursday this week at 7:10 p.m. If that can be arranged remotely, I would certainly appreciate it. Any comments from the council?
Okay, hold on. We'll mask up so you don't go remote. We'll do it just so you don't go
remote. John, if you do decide to call this meeting to a remote meeting, we probably need further notice than 48 hours. So I would look at the following week.
Okay. Thank you.
She's exact. You exact? Of course not. Otherwise, I would be wearing a mask.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, the rationale for our going remote, because people can choose and have reasons not to have it, mask is fine, but it puts everybody else at risk that's in the room with you. I appreciate that, but in order for us to conduct business so that everybody has an opportunity to attend and participate, I believe that we should go remote and should do it as early as we can get it noticed, John. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Steve.
Yeah, I would just second Frank's remarks, and I would just remind everyone that the issue about wearing masks is not about you getting the disease, it's about you spreading the disease, and it's not fair for you to put other people at risk because of your belief that this is somehow not a real thing.
Have you read the mandate?
Point of order.
The mandate,
Point of order, ma'am.
You asked about exceptions.
I haven't acknowledged you, ma'am.
I'm on prophylactic medication.
I understand.
Need a mask.
I understand, and you made that comment at a previous meeting.
Yeah,
As I indicated, unless there's a health issue, I ask folks to mask, please, out of a courtesy for those here that are masking and for this city council.
I'm on medication.
Thank you very much.
I have a health reason for not wearing an improper mask. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're also violating my rights.
Mr. Mayor, I would also like to add that as a member, as a public school teacher, we don't allow students to not wear masks, and at public school board meetings, we don't allow people to come in without masks. There's an opportunity for them to participate remotely, and they've had to adjourn school board meetings in Kalispell because of this very issue. It's difficult and it's not proper for us to be in charge of deciding whether somebody has a health condition or not. You wear the mask, or you don't attend, or you attend remotely, or the meetings go remote.
This says that you have to give us the right.
Mr. Mayor.
I'm telling you how it is, and I don't appreciate when people speak out of turn in the audience either.
I'm going to go ahead. Thank you for those that masked. I appreciate it. We're going to continue with the meeting. I'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would ask Lauren if you would please lead us this evening. Thank you, Lauren. We'll move on to item 3 of the agenda, which is communications from the public. We do have 2 public hearings advertised for this evening. If you're here to speak on those 2 public hearings, I would just ask that you wait until we call those individual hearings. If you have anything else you'd like to bring to the attention of the council, now would be your opportunity. And for the record, your name and address for the minutes, please, when you approach the podium. Any public comment tonight? Yes.
Hi. My name is Maureen, and the comment I have, the first one is, because you do go on the internet after or during these meetings, I think that it's something that you might think about is having people sign up of who they are and their address, because I no longer want to put mine out there. I'm not afraid to give it to you guys, that's not it. It's I just don't want it on the internet. Okay?
Thanks, Maureen.
And I know Frank knows my address. So, and then the second thing that I'd like to bring up, as long as I'm here, is I was a little bit shocked when I came up for the rally this afternoon and to see that on our own Whitefish City Hall, that our flag is not at half-mast. And secondly, our flag is a mess. We really should think about a new one. It's filthy dirty, but it's supposed to be at half-mast starting Sunday morning, or Saturday morning, and it's not.
Thanks, Maureen.
Since Maureen brought up the front of City Hall, the BLM people have older signs leaning against City Hall.
Name and address for the record, please.
Catherine Owens, P.O. Box 1606. So I don't think you want that as kind of like your wall ornaments or their signs up leaning against City Hall. So I would make a recommendation if they have signs, they have to hold them and not lean them there.
Thank you. Further public comment tonight? Not seeing it, I'll stay with the audience. Sir?
Yeah, I'm really curious about this mask stuff. I've personally been tested
Name and address for the record, please.
Brian Scott Nordwall, 4960 Whitefish Stage Road, Whitefish, Montana.
Thank you.
Born and raised here. How many on the council can say that? How many of you have been born and raised here? Okay, thank you. I want to share a couple things with you. One of them is the Constitution of Montana. Let me get to this. You guys, I don't think you're following the state constitution or the federal constitution, and I'd like to know why. It says, State of Montana Constitution, Article 3, Section 1, all political power is vested and derived from the people. All government of right originates with the people, is founded upon their will only, and is instituted solely for the good of the whole. I'd like to know what facts you're using to make these decisions.
Sir, this isn't a question and answer session. You can make your public comment. It'll be noted in the meeting minutes, and that will be it.
Sure. Well, can you get that out in the paper so we can all find out where you're getting your information? The CDC's wrong. They just flipped again today. So as the public, what are we supposed to believe? You have an opinion, you have an opinion, the whole world's got an opinion. The only thing that's true and honest is the Constitution, period. There's no opinion about it. You follow it, you follow the laws on the books. A couple more things, please. The COVID-19 death rate, you guys never talk about it. Death rate without a vaccine is lower than the flu rate, the flu death rate with the vaccine. Just something to ponder. Also, this is an article from 1933. A little beyond all our time, but it plays a role here now because history is not, we have not learned from history. It's being repeated. BLM is Marxist. Antifa has just been designated as terrorists. Anyway, in 1933, Hitler appointed Hermann Göring Minister of the Interior. His first orders were to defund and eliminate the police departments so that they could not interfere with his brown shirts, whose mission it was to riot, burn, beat up, kill citizens in an effort to sway elections. Does that sound familiar to anybody? The cities in this country, and now here, Mayor, stop lying to us. Stop it. The CDC's wrong. You don't have the authority to do it. We, the people, have the authority. Period. Thank you.
Further public comment?
Hi, my name is Jill. Beyond that, I can't give you any more information. I do live in Whitefish. I've had my life threatened by some of the people that are standing outside in front of City Hall. So I will not be giving that information. And like I said at our last meeting, if anything happens to me, you'll be meeting my lawyer. I have a background, I have a scientific background. I've even taught at the university level. I am also an instructor federally. I work in emergency management. I'm a first responder and a wildland firefighter. You guys seem to like CDC and World Health Organization data, stats, quotes. However, they're bought and paid for, they're compromised, they're unethical. But I'll quote you some stuff for the CDC that I have confirmed. They do flip and flop, but I'll pick and choose some things that are truthful that I have confirmed through other reputable institutions that do research such as Stanford, Yale, University of Washington, and USC. This is directly off CDC website, and this has been confirmed by other organizations. Cloth masks will not protect you from wildland fire smoke because particles of that size will get through. Virus particles are exponentially smaller. N95 masks are not approved for a virus of this size. They are used for larger biological contaminants like TB and MRSA. Here's an interesting one. According to the May 2020 CDC study, in preparation with the World Health Organization, this is intended as guidelines on the use of non-pharmaceutical interventions for pandemic influenza in non-medical settings. Here's what was discovered. There's no evidence that surgical masks prevent virus for the wearer or others around the wearer. Doctors wear surgical masks to prevent contamination from splashes of bodily fluid, not microscopic droplets. Cloth masks can make you sicker. And here's a fourth thing that I pulled out of their research study. There's zero evidence that cloth masks, specifically cloth, work on virus of any kind. If this was a real pandemic, we would have a standardized mask for COVID, one type, and it would be certified by OSHA. We would also have biohazard bins and hand washing stations all over town, but we don't. What we have is litter and people wearing dirty masks. Here's what we are seeing. We are seeing chronic headaches in children due to hypoxia. We're seeing more respiratory infections from mask wearing like TB and pleural C. Those are the two big ones that are being documented. Despite all this evidence being released now, I understand that you have to cling to your fear-mongering and to your masks because you can't admit you were wrong. But you come in, you tell us that as per the governor's mandate, we all have to wear masks. If you bothered to read the mandate, you would know that there are exemptions. Then you continue to bully people that may or may not have exemptions. That's not acceptable. You're responsible for breaking the trust in this community and demonizing those of us that fall into the exempt category. I myself, by virtue of what I do in emergency management, I'm on prophylactic medication. Not that it's anyone's business, but I can neither get COVID again, because I've already had it, I can't get it, and I can't spread it. Wouldn't it be nice if everybody had access to that kind of medication, huh? You're openly discriminating against medically exempt, disabled, and handicapped people here tonight. There are over 100 conditions that fall just under COPD. The deaf and hard of hearing are being turned away from businesses in town here because they cannot communicate and are being refused the ADA accommodations that they are guaranteed by law. Sexual assault survivors, PTSD, diabetic acidosis, the list goes on. I could literally be here all night and I can look up study after study from refereed journal articles. You're responsible for this discrimination. You're attempting to do the same here by not holding public meetings. This is not the new normal. This is collective psychosis. You're openly wearing your fear, your pride, and your mental illness on your faces. Not one of you is wearing proper PPE in this proper situation for this virus properly. Working in emergency management, working as a first responder, working in wildland fire, I always wear proper PPE in the proper situation properly, and you will never get me to do anything that is not that. You've lost this war, but you don't want to wave the flag. And it's really insulting how this meeting started out, and then the bullying. When we first came in here, we both have exemptions. You're accountant. Are you an accountant? You're city manager. Asking us about it, but then kept pushing and pushing. That is harassment. That is not allowed under HIPAA or ADA. The lawyers are coming for you. I'm warning you. Thank you.
Further public comment this evening? Ma'am.
My name is Jenny Howard. I live at 616 Wisconsin. I know that there's a lot of issues that all seem pressing. I want to talk about one that is kind of flying under the radar, and that's the issue of public transit in the city. There currently really isn't one. There's a snow bus that runs seasonally, and you know, at some point it only runs on weekends, and then I can't get to where I need to go. A bus is a really easy way to provide access to services like healthcare, school, education, work, recreation, not just for people who don't want to drive or can't drive, but for folks who are disabled, kids who can't drive, so on and so forth. I think it's the case that cars ruin cities, and cars are ruining this city. And so I think it's just as pertinent as everything else that people are bringing up tonight, that we focus on getting a robust transit system, not just for the city of Whitefish, but I encourage all of you to work with the rest of Flathead County in order to get people able to, you know, get to Kalispell, Columbia Falls without driving. I think that is one of the most pressing issues that we can talk about and think about. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Further public comment from the audience? Any volunteer board reports from the audience? How about the council? Any volunteer board reports? Steve?
We had a planning board meeting last Thursday, so we'll be having, at our next meeting, we'll have those items on the agenda.
Great, thanks, Steve. Further board reports? Not seeing any, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Any changes or additions to the September 8th regular session meeting minutes, or can I have a motion for approval, please? Ryan?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is it your second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion? Andy?
I have a couple of minutes corrections that Rebecca asked I read into the record tonight. Page 3, third paragraph, Maureen, state, it was in the minutes, it should have had a D, so stated. Page 4, first paragraph, fourth line, Cannell stayed his motion to deny based on, and add here, premise that this ordinance, excuse me. Page 6, we won't do that one, and then, let's see. And eighth paragraph, sixth line on page 6, it was written as allowed, A-L-O-U-D, but it should be allowed as in A-L-L-O-W-E-D. And Michelle has those also, so.
Thanks, Andy. All those in favor with the corrected minutes, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and the motion does carry unanimously. And just for the record, I neglected to indicate earlier, Rebecca Norton, Councilor Norton, is excused this evening from the meeting. That'll take us quickly on to item 6A of our resolution, which is our first public hearing, and this will be Resolution 20-36, a resolution adopting the Whitefish Sustainable Tourism Management Plan. Lauren, welcome. And thanks so much for your efforts chairing this committee.
Thanks, Mayor Mulfold, Council. I am pleased to present the Whitefish Sustainable Tourism Management Plan for public comment. This plan is the culmination of over 2 years of hard work by the volunteer committee, our consultants, and advisors to the committee. On behalf of the STMP committee, we want to extend a huge thanks to our consultants, Kate McMahon, Lorraine Roach, and our initial consultant, Michelle Archie, as well as our committee advisors, Dylan Boyle and Rhonda Fitzgerald, and also former City Councilor Jen Franzen. The STMP committee is made up of the following community members: myself, Lauren Osolowski, Councilor Andy Fury, Michelle Hauk, Mariah Jews, Alan Myers-Davis, Nick Columbus, Megan Powell, Brian Schott, Craig Workman, and then Steve Thompson was a past member. Our biggest takeaway from this experience has been that a strong and sustainable tourism-based economy touches all facets of our community, and it intersects with various sectors of the economy as well. There is not a single answer to addressing sustainable tourism. And as such, this is a complex plan that provides a lot of data and implementation of action items. As you know, the plan has sparked some really good conversation, both at our City Council work session in early August and then since. And our community is currently experiencing unprecedented impacts as a result of COVID-19, which are also compounding issues that have already been identified in the plan. As a result, continuing the work of this committee by working to prioritize the implementation action items and beginning to act upon those is what our community really needs right now. We need to keep moving this forward. In closing, the STMP committee is recommending that the committee is extended for up to a year and is immediately set to work on prioritizing and implementing identified action items in the plan. This was always kind of, in our eyes, a two-part, as we mentioned in the work session. The first was the data collection and really digging into the meat of what sustainable tourism means, identifying the sections of our community that it intersects with, and it does intersect with a lot of plans that the city currently has. And then the second step would be about kind of prioritizing the action items that are all outlined in that final chapter, and then beginning the work of implementing them. I think another piece of the standing committee is also going to involve recommendation of what type of committee we need moving forward. So I guess standing committee wouldn't be accurate, extending the work of the current committee and then determining what kind of committee, if any, is needed to continue the progress of the plan. And then the committee is willing to come back, and I think should come back sometime in the fall and report on that first step, which is prioritization of action items. In addition, our committee advisor, Dylan Boyle, Executive Director of the Whitefish Convention and Visitors Bureau, will speak specifically to 2 action items that we identified in the plan that need immediate action. We understand and are sympathetic to the circumstances surrounding this meeting and that the formal adoption of the plan will perhaps be tabled. With that said, providing direction to the STMP committee to work in conjunction with the Whitefish CVB on prioritizing and implementing action items is imperative to keep this important work moving forward. And now I'll hand it over to Dylan.
Thanks, Lauren. Welcome, Dylan.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Mulfeld, City Council, and City staff. My name is Dylan Boyle. I'm the Executive Director of the Whitefish Convention and Visitors Bureau, which is also known as Explore Whitefish. And as Lauren mentioned, I also serve as an advisor to the Whitefish Sustainable Tourism Management Committee. And while we obviously understand the potential need tonight to table a formal adoption of the STMP plan, we do ask you to consider providing some guidance for the CVB as well as the committee on moving forward on planned action items that could be integrated into our current safety messaging, as well as keeping our momentum moving forward as we are addressing these acute issues our community is facing with sustainable tourism. And obviously, we strive for public input, and we also realize that our community right now is fatigued by over-tourism after an extraordinarily busy summer and during a pandemic, and we may need more time to participate in that process, and we certainly understand that. Some of the key components that we ask to continue our work with the committee and to really roll up our sleeves with our staff and our agencies at the CVB are education and outreach in particular. And that, in our eyes, is the most timely action item, and it's identified in the work program on executive summary page 6, which is at the beginning of the document. It's also listed as a priority action item on page 5 in the executive summary as well, which is to really promote that safe and responsible tourism, which are obviously some of the issues that we heard in all of our public comments, in our public input sessions, as well as in our surveys that we conducted as well. It's really important to note when I'm talking about this that we have received a safety grant from the Montana Office of Tourism and Business Development specifically to put out safety messaging for responsible travel during the pandemic, but that also does include elements of recreating responsibly and being kind to each other while you're visiting our community as well. And so all those elements, I think, really tie in nicely. The thing is that those grant funds have to be expended before the end of this year. And so we are working really hard in my office formulating a great plan, and it really actually integrates very nicely with the action item of education outreach with the Sustainable Tourism Management Plan. Some examples of some of the work that we want to undertake here in the next few months, some projects and tasks are a visitor value statement, recreating responsibly campaign and messaging, obviously integrating our safe travel, clean, careful, connected messaging and our sustainability message into our new travel guide, which will come out in December on our website on explorewhitefish.com, through our social media channels. We are going to conduct some photo and video shoots which do integrate safe and sustainable messaging. And I think a lot of this for us is also prepping for winter, which is also going to be, all indications are that it is going to be a busy ski season. So it's timely in that manner as well. In addition, some digital and radio advertisements with that safety and sustainability messaging. And I also want to note that looking at the Whitefish brand guidelines is also identified in the work program, which is executive summary page 6. And that is something that was also identified as a CVB action item in the plan. And within that, I want you to know that the CVB is planning to engage a renowned brand strategist, whose name is Mike Bento, who actually came up with the Montana brand as well as our Whitefish brand guidelines, to really work with us to integrate elements of the Sustainable Tourism Management Plan into our branding and messaging for our visitors. And it's a great opportunity. Mike knows us very well. And again, I think it's very, very timely. And as I mentioned, this is one of those identified steps for the CVB, but we'd also like the involvement of the committee in that process as well, as they've obviously been working very hard on this and have some really great knowledge base on how to message this and move forward. Examples of those types of responsible messaging from some other communities are found in Appendix B of the plan as some examples. And I just want to reiterate that the Whitefish CVB is committed to the Whitefish Sustainable Tourism Management Plan, and by providing some guidance to us to move forward. It does help to really build that critical momentum during this really important time as we work towards solutions to these identified issues. And I think it's more important than ever that we get to work on those. Thank you.
Thanks, Dylan, very much. Anything further from the committee, Lauren? Okay. Any questions for the committee from council before we open our public hearing? Steve?
Just had one question for you, Dylan. You said that safety messaging is about the acute measures being taken right now for the pandemic. Is the money that we just got is directed at that messaging? Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. It's within partnership with Montana Office of Tourism and Business Development. So a lot of it is that safety messaging around being clean, careful, and connected with our face coverings, hand sanitizer, also social distancing, and also staying connected with the most up-to-date information locally. But it also has elements as well of recreating responsibly and leaving a community better than you found it, which I think is a really important piece that we heard about in the Sustainable Tourism Plan. So I think even with the funds, being utilized as we have to for the grant funds for more of that safety forward messaging, we can integrate that recreation responsibly message. And I think that will be something that we'll have as an evergreen piece. That's really going to be a legacy of the plan and of the work that we do, even after the pandemic. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Steve. Further questions? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing on what will be our own ordinance 20-36. Now would be your opportunity to comment. Is there any public comment this evening on this item?
I didn't. My name is Catherine, P.O. Box 1606. I didn't check anything off that I was going to speak for this. But I want to just ask a question. Is this sustainable tourism have anything to do with, and I don't know, I'm completely coming from ignorance here, does it have anything to do with Agenda 21 or ICLEI? And the word sustainable seems to be kind of a buzzword, the way that organic used to be about 10 years ago, kind of a marketing ploy. And not too long ago, I read an article in the paper about the sustainable tourism, and there was a quote that said, "We want people to be like-minded, tourists when they come in to be like-minded, like we are." And I thought that was really interesting. So the way I took it was, we're going to kind of check people's values at the door before they come into Whitefish. That was how I read that. And they have to think like city council does. Oh shoot, I just had another thought. And that came in and went. Anyway, I don't know, it just, I don't know about the sustainable tourism. It has a good word, but sometimes those good words aren't necessarily best for the community. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. The masks, and to have something in our sustainable tourism that includes masks, we cannot see smiles. Do you know how bad that is for tourism? I cannot see one smile. That is crazy. And that we're masking teachers and children at schools. I have 6 children. That is so sad. Those children can't see the smile from their teacher when they do something amazing. I don't think you understand what this is creating. And to have masks in your sustainable tourism is really sad to me. It really is. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Who's next? Just please help yourself.
Thank you for bringing up the Brian Scott Nordwell 4960 Whitefish. Thank you for bringing that up. 2,300 years ago. I don't know if that guy's listening or not. He seems to be doing a project. 2,300 years ago, long before Islam Arabs discovered that forcing people to cover their nose and mouths broke their will. and individuality and depersonalized them. It made them submissive. That's all this is. The COVID information is wrong. The CDC is wrong. Steve Bullock is wrong.
Sir, what relevance do these comments have regarding
It has
our
to do with this. And all these people coming in here and ruining my home.
That's next on our agenda, and you're happy to talk to the ordinance at that time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment on this item? Lisa?
Honorable Mayor and distinguished city councilors, my name is Lisa Jones and I live at 314 Blanchard Hollow in Whitefish. And I first want to thank you for all the volunteer work that you do on behalf of our city and all you put up with and still keep coming back at it to do your very best job for us. And then I would like to make a comment on the hearing that we've been talking about, and I will say that ignorance is bliss, and that if people will actually read the Sustainable Tourism Management Plan, then they won't have to come up and bully the council. I would also like to say that I'm representing only myself tonight and no other organizations that I'm affiliated with or work for. I have worked in tourism for 3 decades, and that's why I'm standing here. Because we've been working on sustainable tourism for a long time, because it didn't just happen yesterday, and it's not just here, it's from Barcelona to Bend. It's all over the world. And so the things that have been, the volunteers and the leaders in our community that have spent 2 years going to meetings to work on this have really put some thought into this process and have taken all of us into consideration. The businesses, the environment, the visitors, everything, the city, all different aspects are partners in land management and public lands. It is a very thoughtful plan. And I just want to really ask the community, even though we understand we are all frankly angered by the over-tourism, we all have experiences every day that are difficult, and that we are fatigued by the situation that we are in currently, but to please make the public comment, because this council probably isn't getting a lot of information right now because people are fatigued. But I can tell you from what I hear and from what I read that people are very supportive of sustainable tourism and management. And it's forward thinking, and that I hope that you will consider letting it move forward in some capacity, even if you can't adopt the entire plan based on the circumstances. And I certainly understand then. And thank you again for your time.
Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate your comments tonight. Who's next? Further public comment on this item? Not seeing any, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for motion or a discussion. Who'd like to begin? Andy.
I would move that we approve resolution number 20-36, which is a resolution adopting the Whitefish Sustainable Tourism Master Plan.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Andy, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I made a lot of comments about it 4 weeks ago after we'd had, I think it was 4 weeks ago, right after we'd had our work session. And I agree with some of the criticism that this is not a perfect document. I generally find that everything that of this size that we pass as this council is usually not a perfect document and will require some work over time. But I think as I look at it, and one of the major complaints I think is that there's not a lot of actionable items, or there's not a lot of metrics in there to say, okay, enough's enough. And I'm not sure that either of those things are really obtainable, and I'm not necessarily sure that there's something that we can include in the document. But one thing I think I've looked at this summer is I've looked at all of the people that have been here and heard more than one story of people seeing toilet paper alongside the trail. I think the educational component of this is extremely important. I think it's important for our tourists, it's important for our people that work in the service industry. And I think that we will work out the bugs over time on this, but I think there are actually a lot of things in here that are of value. And I think that now is a time that this community would probably like to see us say, okay, yeah, we are starting to address this problem, because there's a lot of people that are very weary this summer. I myself work in the service industry. I spend 3 days a week washing tables 10 hours a day. And I've talked to literally hundreds of people this summer, thousands actually. We have 200 to 250 people a day that come through the bakery, and I pretty much talk to every single one of them. It's amazing I don't have COVID. But we all wear masks, that's probably why. And we do have a different group of people coming here now. And I think one thing that's really important to understand with this plan is I think we started, Lauren, 2 years ago? So we started 2 years ago on this plan. This isn't something we just decided after COVID that we were going to go ahead and do it. Last time I read it, I didn't see a single mention of masks in the plan in the 141 pages. I didn't see a single one in there. Because you know what? It isn't in there. But what is in there is it's targeted to give our visitors the best possible experience and reduce the impact on the people that actually live here on a daily basis, so we can all benefit from the economics that tourism brings us, and we can all not get sick of it and say everybody from Texas can get in their car and go home. So I would encourage us to go ahead and pass this tonight, and that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Andy. Question on your motion. Can we include in your motion that the standing committee be extended to October 1st, 2021, which I think was a request of Dylan?
I would agree to that, yes.
And then secondly, they would like to move forward by year end on education and the outreach components of the plan, which are summarized in the work program on page 6 of the executive summary, which would include messaging, work on the travel guide, the website, preparing for winter, digital messaging, as well as working with our consultant on Whitefish branding guidelines.
Yes, and adopting the work plan as presented.
Okay, thank you, Andy. And that's okay with the second?
Yes.
Okay, Councilor Quinnell.
At our work session, there was some question as to whether extending the working group would add additional costs. Has that been worked out?
I'll let Dana address that question. I think the only costs that we'd incur would be committee time and, of course, the consultant that will come on board to help with branding, which I believe can be in part paid for with this new safeties grant.
There will be no cost to the city. That would be borne by the CVB.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Further questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and the motion does carry unanimously. Dylan and Lauren, thank you very much for coming tonight. Appreciate your time. And we'll move on to item 6B of our agenda, which is ordinance 20-14, an emergency ordinance providing for remote meetings of the city council, city boards and committees, and waiving a second reading. This will be the only reading. And if the ordinance passes, it will go into effect immediately. With that said, I'll introduce Angela Jacobs, our city attorney, for her staff report. Thanks, Angie.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I believe this is our 4th or 5th emergency ordinance since the COVID pandemic hit, and I think we've been trying to be fluid and deal with it as it comes. I will not torture you with the history of our COVID pandemic. I would like to hit a couple of high points. On March 24th, 2020, Governor Bullock issued a directive which encouraged local governments to find ways to provide for the right of public participation consistent with social distancing. 3 days later, the Attorney General issued a letter of advice which opined that holding public meetings remotely with the opportunity for public participation comports with the guarantees of our Montana State Constitution, in specific the right to participate and the directive that we hold public meetings. After that, we did go to remote meetings. We held them via WebEx, or at least via City Council. We had a few glitches, but for the most part, they worked very well. On April 22nd, Governor Bullock issued a directive establishing the phased reopening of Montana, and provided that his previous directives remained in effect as long as they were not inconsistent with his future directives. On May 19th, Governor Bullock issued a directive establishing the conditions for phase 2 of the phased reopening of Montana, which provided that gatherings of 50 individuals or more should be canceled if social distancing cannot be established, that vulnerable individuals should continue to adhere to his stay-at-home guidance, and again, that his previous directives remained in effect. So from a legal standpoint, we are still allowed to hold remote meetings. I think most, if not all towns in Montana are actually holding remote meetings. We did hold live meetings for at least a couple months. It was lovely to see your faces, but we did have some issues. In particular, we took steps to ensure that social distancing could be accomplished. We separated you folks, we've separated chairs, but we have had a couple of meetings where significant public attendance has made social distancing very difficult. In addition, the city's mask ordinance has expired, but the governor's directive with respect to masks does continue, and it will continue in effect until we have 4 or more, or 4 or less active and confirmed COVID cases in the county of Flathead. If you all read the news this weekend, I think you'll probably see that that's going to be quite a while before we reach those numbers. We have had several citizens contact us. I've been contacted by them, and they have expressed significant concern that they want to attend public meetings, they want to be here, they want to provide public comment, but they have concerns given the fact that we haven't necessarily been able to socially distance as well as we could in this conference room, and that there's various individuals that will not or cannot wear masks. Dana polled you folks, I think, last meeting and asked if you would be interested in going back to remote meetings. I think some of you expressed a little bit of sadness that we might have to do this, but I believe the consensus was that you guys would at least consider an ordinance going back to remote meetings. So the ordinance in front of you provides that city council meetings will be held remotely via WebEx. It has a 98-day expiration, as all do emergency ordinances in Montana. If we're in the same situation 2 months in the future, I think we can consider a bit of a more permanent ordinance. It also provides that city boards and committees, upon majority vote, can decide to go to remote meetings. We have had members of committees and boards express concern about participating in live meetings. It kind of puts some of the same bookends that we did on remote meetings previously. We are encouraging the public to provide written comments. We are limiting live comment to 3 minutes per individual. And at the end of the live comment, Michelle, or Michelle's designee, will read the names and addresses, if people are willing to give them, of each individual providing written comment and whether they support or oppose the proposed application. Staff does recommend that the council adopt this ordinance. I am significantly concerned that people who want to participate in our government in a constructive way aren't feeling comfortable that they can do so. So unless you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, Angie, for your staff report. Any questions for Angie? We'll start with Steve.
Angie, do you have any of that documented, people that have said, okay, is that?
Sure, Steve.
That
I think if you'll
report?
recall our mask, I've had phone calls. No, they're not documented. If you will recall our public meeting about encouraging masks or mandating masks, there was a 7th grade teacher, who's actually my son's teacher, who stood up and said, I spoke on behalf of 21 or 27 individuals that are not comfortable showing up here. So.
Further questions for Angie? Ben?
Angie, what about all the other city boards? Are they bound by this? And if so, or if not, do we have any means of helping them do their own video meetings?
Say again, Ben, I'm so sorry.
Just like, what about the other city boards?
So they can, by majority vote, decide to hold their meetings remote as well. I will say, talk a little bit about, I guess, the financial issue, or not issues really, because it is actually covered by our CARES funding. We will have to pay for WebEx, but it will be covered by CARES funding. So it will be at no cost really to the citizens.
If one of the city boards, the other city boards does want to continue operating, are they able to use WebEx as well?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Ben. Further questions for Angie?
And Ben, I'm sorry, we would anticipate that committees and boards continue to hold meetings. Whether or not they hold them remotely or live would be up to a majority vote
of the board or committee.
Further questions from the council? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing on what will be our own ordinance 20-14, an emergency ordinance providing for remote meetings of the city council, city boards, and committees, and waiving a second reading. And we'll hold that public hearing now. I do have a sign-up sheet. Certainly, if you didn't sign up, that doesn't mean you can't speak or present your comments to the council, but I'll start with the list. And Jill, you're up. Okay. Thank you, Joe. Scott? All set? Thanks, Scott. Maureen?
Again, Maureen. You know, I don't come to very many meetings for the city council. Many years ago, I tried to volunteer for a committee and was not asked to join that committee. And of course, it was, again, quite a few years ago. And I felt like it was a boys' club or an all-boys club or a only who you know club. So I've pretty much stayed away. And I've only come to city council meetings when it's a particular issue that I feel has affected my life in an extreme way. But now that I'm getting old and retired, I have more time. So I hope to be here more often, not to bother you, but to help in the way that is good in my eyes. Just as the job you do all is good in your eyes, and you're passionate about what you are doing. And I do appreciate the time that you put in, you know. But I also am passionate. I'm a very passionate person in what I believe in. And I don't just love my country, I love where I live. I feel blessed to live here, that I had chosen here. But I find this city has changed so much in the 26 years that I've been here that it's just so different, and not necessarily, in my opinion, to the better. I do wonder why we could not use the plexiglass shields for all of you, so that you don't have, I really don't want to see this go remote. I mean, I really, I worry about things like there's an internet glitch, or, oh, Maureen, we didn't see that you wanted to talk, or, you know, and I'm not going to say whether it's on purpose or not. You know, I don't know. You know, there are people that, you know, maybe there's people that want to come to meetings, but to be honest, the few that I have come to, there's not very many people here unless it's something that really hits them. It's the same group I see that when I come that I saw the last time, you know. So I also feel that people such as people my age, older, and even some younger, don't have the capabilities to know how to get on WebEx. I've never done it. I was hoping for Zoom. I know that standing here tonight and talking to you, that I'm wasting my time. At least I feel that. I don't feel that you really want to hear, and I'm not pointing at anyone specifically, I'm meaning in general, that you want to hear that we want this, because I truly feel that your mind is made up. But I think that being more informative to people about how to get to these meetings and how it works, I think maybe there needs to be something available for some of us that aren't as smart as others. I guess I just really needed to say that. But please think of some of us and what we want, and that our needs to be seen and heard versus worrying if we're going to be ignored. And that's truly what it comes down to for me, is that I won't be heard when I want to stand up and say something. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen, for your comments. And finally, Catherine.
Hi, Catherine Owens, P.O. Box 1606. I understand that, though it's the governor's directive, that you all are proponents of the mask, clearly, and you're proponents of shutdowns. And I'm wondering if you are aware of the damage it's causing in the wake. We all think of putting on a seatbelt when we think of wearing a mask, but that doesn't protect anybody else. So I compare it to driving 30 miles an hour in a 60-mile-an-hour speed zone. We're so busy looking forward and not crashing and not hurting anybody that we're not aware that there are pileups behind us. And there's increase of suicide. There's increase in divorce. There's increase in child abuse. There's increase of bankruptcy. People are losing their jobs. It's what's happening in the wake of this mask mandate is crazy. It's awful. And Mother Teresa, who you know would go and pick up the poorest of the poor, she never wore a mask. She never worried about infecting anybody, and she never worried that she would be infected. And somebody asked her, Mother Teresa, what is the greatest illness in the world? And she said, loneliness. And that is what this is creating. We cannot see your smiles. I had somebody in Costco, I cut her off accidentally, and she said, I'm sorry, this mask didn't allow you to see my smile. And here's the thing. Lula's just shut down. 3rd grade is home. All these people are losing their jobs who want to go to work. They want to go to work. Little neighbor girl next to me is in 3rd grade. She wants to go to her classroom and she cannot. Both parents work. They can't go to their jobs. They can't go to school, but you can. You can have these board meetings. You can have these committee meetings. You guys are about 20 feet from us. You're 15 feet from the next person, at least 6 feet in your chairs. Show solidarity to the people that you're asking to lose their jobs. Amen. You're asking so much of them, and you can be at a meeting. Anyway, that's what the most I wanted to say. Another thing, after learning about what she had spoken about the meeting, why can't you do a hybrid? When the kids did 4-H, this was the first year. You had some people in the audience at the arena and some people bidding online. And have a hybrid meeting, so there's a camera in the back of the room, people can watch, and you have an ability to hear, somehow, I don't know, I'm not very technologically savvy, somehow they can push a button that says, we want to speak. And you still have this meeting for people that want to come. But basically, if this were really bad, we would be talking about the dying. Why not? We're talking about whether we should have Zoom meetings at home or not. If we were all dying, I would be the first one to mask up and pack masks and give them to the kids and the families that don't have them. Here, put a mask on. Everybody in my family's dying. Everybody in my neighborhood's dying. They're not. That's why we get to have these conversations. That's why we get to argue. Because we're not dying. I have lived in 3 different states, traveled the world. I don't know anybody who's died. But lastly, show solidarity to those people that it's okay for them to shut their businesses down. You can come. You can work. And to choose not to is not showing solidarity with them. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Further public testimony this evening? Yes. And then, Scott, you can go up after this. Ladies first, please. Thanks.
Jenny, 616 Wisconsin. I think a really great thing about these meetings is that I get to be exposed to a lot of different opinions, some that I really disagree with and some that I agree with, and all the in between. And I think it's really important that I get to participate in this community and that all of my community members also get to participate. That being said, I'm in favor of the remote meetings. But I think, as some of our community members have mentioned, there's a bit of an access issue, right? So I talked earlier about public transit. So that, in a way that provides access, I think if we're going to do remote meetings, if y'all are going to do remote meetings, it's important to be able to give the education necessary so everyone can still access those. Because I'm 24, I'll be fine. I know how to access WebEx. Some of our community members have not been exposed to those sorts of things. And so I think if you do pass this ordinance, to provide the education, that way everyone can feel like their opinions are being heard, that they are still participating in their communities, and that they can access our decisions here.
Thanks, Jenny. Scott?
Hey, Brian, Scott Norval, you know it. There was a person here that made a comment that said that she felt people were bullying you. I have to disagree with that. This is simply what freedom sounds like. You folks are taking the wrong road, you're following the wrong information, and you're making the wrong decisions for the people. Please reconsider.
Thank you, Scott. Further public testimony this evening. Lisa.
314 Blanchard Hollow Road. I hope that you will go ahead and go with your remote meetings. I think that makes the most sense, especially since if masks are such a divisive issue, then people don't have to wear them when they go into the meeting. There's also my understanding from years of participation in public process, you can write a note, you can drop it off at City Hall, you can mail it, you can email it, your public comment, it's all documented. So there's lots of ways to participate if you don't want to get on the WebEx. And I also am a rule follower, and so I just want to reiterate that there's a public process and there's rules for these meetings. You don't get to ask the council questions during public comment, and you don't get to survey the crowd during public comment. So I just wanted to provide some further education and some wish that we can all be peaceful and be respectful in public process. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lisa. Further public testimony. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion. As a reminder, I believe ordinances do need to pass with the majority vote of those present this evening. I'll turn it over to the council. Steve.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 20-14 to move to remote meetings of city council, city boards, and committees, and waiving a second reading.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Hennon. Steve, would you like to speak to your motion?
I would. I don't think this would really be necessary if there was a general feeling of solidarity in the community in this country about what the right thing to do is in response to this pandemic. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again here, it's a failure of leadership that goes all the way to the top. Now, I am a teacher, public school teacher, and at my school, we have a culture that when you come in the door, you wear your mask and you get hand lotion. We don't have temperature sensors. We don't have the things that the other high schools in this county have, and it's not safe, and I'll tell you that. It is not safe. And I'm a teacher. I didn't sign up to be a frontline healthcare worker, and my life is at risk every day. Excuse me.
Point of order, sir. Please respect the councilor's time.
I don't tell anyone in my classroom, and I teach government and civics and U.S. history, what to believe. I tell them to follow the rules, because that is what this country is. It is a country of rules and laws, and no one is above those. And if you think you are, then you don't understand Civics 101. And so this move to remote meetings has been made necessary because people won't follow those rules. It's that simple. Happened at the school board in Kalispell, and it's happening here, and it may only be a matter of time before our schools go back to remote learning. If people weren't getting sick, we wouldn't have to shut third grade down. And maybe if we had gotten ahead of this thing by creating a culture that believes in science and believes in the things that we need to do for the good of the whole, as Mr. Scott mentioned, we wouldn't be in the situation that we are in now. And we wouldn't have the economic crisis that we're in now. But we can't go backwards, we can only go forwards. And so at this point, it's necessary. It's necessary for us to move to remote meetings. It's necessary for us to take into account the safety and health of our citizens in this city, and especially in this country. And that's, I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Steve. Further comments from the council? Andy?
Yeah, just a couple quick comments. One comment to a comment that was made earlier about we have our minds made up. I heard that 2 weeks ago from almost everybody out there. And you know what? We didn't pass that ordinance, did we? No, because most people didn't even stay around to see if we did pass it or not. They just left. Got up, said their piece. So, no, we don't come in here with our minds made up. So that's the truth. That's not fake news. That's real news. I find remote meetings, quite frankly, cumbersome at best. I find them difficult. It's hard to read people's body language when they're in a two-dimensional form. I think body language is important. Some people would say it's 80% of communication. But I also know that we've had a case here at City Hall now, and we owe it to the public that comes to these meetings to keep them safe. And the way we can do that is by going to remote meetings. And for everyone that doesn't think that's a good idea, there's someone out there that thinks it's a great idea. Because there are people that don't come here now because they do have health issues. They can't come to the meeting and feel safe. So I understand that. And what gets lost, and it's been basically this entire summer on people, is just because you firmly believe something, just because you found something on the internet that you think is true, just like I have found something on the internet that's true, there's somebody else out there that thinks differently than you do. And you know, everybody that's running around claiming to be a patriot, but you can only be a patriot if you think exactly like they do. And you know, one thing that this country is great about, and our forefathers gave us a fabulous system. They gave us a system that allowed us to practice whatever religion we wanted, think whatever we wanted, express those opinions freely, openly, without persecution, a free press, all of those things. And they gave us all those things, but then they also gave us a system to take all of that varying and different opinion and boil it down and come up with a public policy that ultimately serves everyone, not just one group, not just that group or this group, the group on this corner, the group on that corner, the group on that corner. No, to serve all of us. Good of the whole, not good of the individual. I said this 2 weeks ago. Somehow, the sole act of citizenship and patriotism in this country has become an expression of individualism. No, it's us working together to make this country a better place. That's what people did when they went off to World War II, World War I, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, name any of those things. That's what we've all done. We've collectively as a country, and we've somehow lost that ability. You're either with us or you're against us. And if you're against us, then you know what? You're a communist, you're a socialist, you're a Trumper, you're a something. But you're not one of us. Well, you know what? We don't get that luxury here at the City Council. We run as nonpartisans here. We volunteer our time. We try and do the best thing we can do for this community as a whole. And I look at all of the great things that have been done in this community, and you know what? In the last 30 years, local government's done a pretty good job. So all that said, I said more than I wanted. It's apart from the ordinance, but I think we have to do it. And as much as I don't like to do it, I will support the motion.
Thank you, Andy. Further comments from the council? Frank?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to echo that I agree with Andy. Remote meetings are in many ways more challenging than the in-person meetings because of the requirements of those attending and us as participants every week or every other week. That said, one of the reasons that we have to do this, and the only way that we make this community have, the entire community have an ability to participate, is because there are those in this community that feel they have a right or a reason that they don't need to wear a mask or follow social distancing, and that's fine. But that doesn't mean that the others that want to participate and believe those things are important and then can't because those people choose and or that or have an ability or have a reason not to, don't have the opportunity to participate. That's wrong. That's not what this community is about. It's about inclusion. It's about solicitation of all members of this community to participate in the decisions this group makes. So I am going to vote to support this thing. I'm not happy that we have to do it, but we have no choice. Otherwise, we exclude large portions of our community from participating in these meetings. So thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Further comments from the council? I just have a few related to how we can ensure a robust public process moving forward. I know that concern's been brought up by several folks that commented. Tonight, just as a reminder, we meet at 7:10 p.m. on the first and third Mondays of each month. Our packet, which is made public at least 5 days in advance, is available online at cityofwhitefish.org. Included in that packet as the first page is the City Council regular meeting agenda. Within that agenda, you will find directions on how you can log in remotely and join the meeting via WebEx. If you don't want to dive into the hundreds of pages of packet of information that we typically have on a weekly basis, you can get the Cliff Notes version from the city manager's report, which is included in the packet shortly after the agenda. The agenda and the packet is bookmarked, so you can actually go to individual sections pretty painlessly, which is a big help. You can also sign up by contacting our city manager directly. She does weekly email updates to the community. It's a list that's now built to, I think, 700-800 individuals citywide, if not more, and you're welcome to join that list, and it provides updates on a weekly basis as to committee meetings, board meetings, council meetings, and again, when we do have a packet published for the regular meeting, it's included in Dana's weekly update as well. So that's how you can stay involved. If you do have technical problems during the next meeting, please direct those comments to the city, and we'll do everything we can to assist you to make sure it's more seamless at the next meeting. So I want to thank everyone for participating tonight in this agenda item. And with that said, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and the motion does carry unanimously. And we're going to go ahead and adjourn for about 5 minutes. We'll reconvene at 8:30 p.m.
Marcus, you're not a real local. It's like, okay.
We're going to go ahead and get started. If folks can please take their seats.
I'm just gonna go to work and. Jesus.
Okay.
Go ahead and call this meeting back to order. We left off moving on to item 7A of the agenda, and we'll have Dana handle this item in Craig's absence, and its consideration to award the engineering contract for the Edgewood Place and Texas Avenue reconstruction project. Dana.
Thank you. Good evening, council. In your packet, you have a report from Craig Workman regarding the Edgewood Place and Texas Avenue reconstruction project. We are starting with engineering, surveying, and design for the project. In accordance with our city policy, the Public Works Department advertised for proposals from qualified consulting engineer firms to provide engineering services for this project. The proposals that were received on August 7th, 2020, were reviewed by the rating panel, which included Craig Workman and Karin Helding. And then interviews were taken place by the selection panel that included Craig Workman, Karin Helding, and Councilor Davis. A total of 3 proposals were received, and all 3 were interviewed. And during the selection panel interviews at the end, it was unanimously decided that Robert Pesha and Associates should be awarded the contract for engineering services. The Public Works Department has negotiated numerous contracts with RPA for other road reconstruction projects in the past. Currently, we have $300,000 budgeted in the Resort Tax Fund, and we intend to start survey work immediately and begin design of the project. We are monitoring resort tax because our collections are lower than anticipated, but we will slowly work through the design and engineering contract with RPA. So based on the process that was followed for the RFP for Edgewood Place and Texas Avenue, the Public Works Department respectfully recommends that a contract be awarded to RPA to complete the engineering design for the Edgewood Place and Texas Avenue reconstruction project, and that the city manager be authorized to execute the contract. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dana. Any questions for Dana? Not seeing any. Just real quick, Dana, is this an FY22 project?
The actual construction of the road would probably be in FY22. It's going to depend on where our resort tax collections go during this next year for us to build enough cash reserves to fund the project.
So the improvements they just made on Edgewood, East Edgewood, was that just an overlay to buy us some time?
Yep, so the Public Works Department felt that Edgewood would not make it through this winter, and so an overlay was completed by city staff.
Great, thanks, Dana. Frank, you have a question?
Dana, I know this is probably Craig, but we say future task orders will include subsurface utilities. We're not getting any of this. All we're getting for 300 grand is literally engineering.
So we have not negotiated the engineering contract at $300,000. That's just what's in the budget, and so we're going to work through the negotiations with RPA.
Okay.
But it is likely to include survey work, design work, and other contract management, is my understanding.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions? We will need a motion awarding the contract to RPA, please. Ryan.
I would move that a contract be awarded to Robert Pesha and Associates to complete the engineering design for the Edgewood Place and Texas Avenue reconstruction project, and the city manager be authorized to execute the contract.
Thank you, Ryan. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Deputy Sweeney. Further comments, questions? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and the motion does carry unanimously. Thank you, Dana. We'll stay with you, Dana, however. We have Dana's written report enclosed in the packet. Any questions for Dana? Dana, anything additional to report on?
I do. I actually have some good news. The city of
We
Whitefish.
welcome that.
Huh?
We welcome that.
Yeah, right? The city of Whitefish. It's been a while. The city of Whitefish actually has partnered with the North Valley Food Bank to collect apples from our trees throughout town. One of the issues we have in town, and you're aware of, is bears, and bears love our apple trees. So the city has worked with the North Valley Food Bank to have people come volunteer and collect apples from our trees in our parks. And so that kicked off. There was a really great article in the Flathead Beacon about it as well. And so we hope that this will be one way to mitigate the desire for bears to come visit town. Of course, we have garbage, and that's a different issue, but it's one step in the right direction. And as you all are aware, we did have a positive case of COVID at City Hall that did require other employees to be quarantined at this time. Therefore, out of an abundance of caution, I did shut down City Hall to the public. However, we are holding this meeting, but moving forward, other committee meetings are going to continue to be canceled and or held remotely now with the passage of the ordinance. As for duration, as of right now, 2 weeks, we'll reassess the situation to see if we have any additional spread within our employees and consider reopening City Hall at that time. So, yeah, have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Frank?
It's not so much a question, Dana, but I do appreciate including the other reports that you did in here from Public Works and from the parks as well. That was very, very helpful and good to see. And so thanks so much for doing that. That was really good.
Okay.
Thanks, Frank, and thanks, Dana. We will move on to item 9A of the agenda, which is a letter of a request from Jerry Dunker for amendments to deed restrictions for Trailview LLC. Are there any comments on Jerry's letter to the City Council? We'll start with Steve.
I would not support changing what they're asking to change. This is supposed to be an affordable housing thing. If we go to 8 months, it's clear that the people are just going to rent them out, and that's not the intent of that whole project over there.
I agree. Frank?
I concur with Steve's analysis.
Okay. Microphone, please.
I concur with Steve's analysis. I think that's exactly right. I would not be interested in entertaining it at this time.
Okay. Any further comments from the council? Is that the general consensus?
That's my consensus as well.
Okay. Not seeing any in favor of Jerry's request, we'll go ahead and move on. Angie, if you don't mind reaching back out to Jerry, I know you worked with him closely on that. I'd appreciate it. Thanks very much. And we'll move on to comments from city councilors. Steve, why don't we start with you tonight? We'll move back up the dais towards me.
I just want to say that I just want to give some validation to the fact that this is really such a difficult time. It's very stressful for everybody involved. It's stressful for businesses, it's stressful for schools, it's stressful for us. And tempers are flaring. And like Andy said, unfortunately, our country has devolved into this kind of line of scrimmage where you don't get to, and nobody changes teams, everybody's just lined up in opposition to each other, and it's quite a interesting metaphor right outside City Hall there. And I'm worried about what it says for our democracy when we can't sit in a room, express different opinions, and have people come and get in your face after public comment. It's not how democracy used to work in this country, and it's not how it should work. People should not interrupt when somebody who's an elected official makes comments. Unfortunately, that's where we are, and I hope that we can all kind of find a way to get back to what civil discourse is, and I'm as guilty as I'm probably the guiltiest one on this council for losing my temper with this stuff, and I apologize for that. And I just don't. I'm not seeing a lot of light at the end of the tunnel right now, and it's really kind of it's just a difficult time. I want to give validation to that for people who are feeling that, and I'm sure city staff is feeling that way as well. And anyway, I'm glad that we're all in this together, and I feel that we have a consensus within our staff, within our council, that we can lean on each other when we need to, and I appreciate that. So anyway, that's all.
Thanks, Steve. Frank, anything this evening?
I just want to, I guess the best thing is I want to give Dana a shout out. I think she has done a spot-on job with managing this city, managing this building, helping us navigate this problem, making the tools available through WebEx and other things that we need to have to be able to go to remote when we need to. And I appreciate that. And I think that one of the things, and I hope it probably got walked away from earlier, just like this will be, the reason that we need to go to remote meetings at this time is because we have a pandemic that's exploding in this valley as we speak. It's worse now than it ever has been by a magnitude of 30. I mean, we're getting 30 plus cases a day. It's exploding. The people that cannot wear masks or will not wear masks or have an excuse not to wear masks, I appreciate that. That does not mean that they get to exclude other people who are concerned and have health concerns from participating in our decisions. By going to a remote system, we're going to be able to accommodate them and their needs, as well as those that don't want to wear masks. They can still participate, and they can still reach out to us, and they can still interact with us. There is no impediment to their continuing to do so. This simply gives others an opportunity to participate and not have to run the risks that these folks think that they're entitled to run. So I find their arguments specious at best, and not in the best keeping of this community and all members of the community to be able to participate in their government. So I'm very encouraged that we pass this. I don't want to stay there long if we can avoid it, but I'll stay there as long as is necessary to make sure that every member of this community gets to participate with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Ben?
No further comments, thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Ryan?
I'll echo what Frank said, yeah. And Andy, I don't like the remote meetings. They're such a pain. It seems like you're always muted when you don't want to be, and then when you don't want to be muted, you are muted. And they're a mess everywhere. The courts are a mess. But shout out to staff. You guys are doing a great job handling all the madness. But hopefully, the election's, I don't know, 45 days away now. At least the narrative will change. It has to. So I guess there's a little bit of light for you, Steve. But yeah, it is a little crazy right now. But hopefully we can get back to in-person meetings sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Ryan. Andy?
Well, I was told that I shouldn't lecture people by one of the audience members, and they're probably right. They probably shouldn't, although I told them that they needed to be lectured because, well, they needed to be lectured. But I do have a really hard time, and I have to say this, and I didn't want to say it because it was not relevant to the motion at hand, but when someone stands up here and says, nobody's dying, I don't know a single person that has died. Do you? Well, for the 10 families who lost people that lived in the care facility here in Whitefish, for the families, friends, and loved ones of the 200,000 people that have died in this country to date, that's a horrible thing to say. That's an absolutely horrible thing to say. And I just can't stand by and watch people make light of the losses that people are experiencing in this country right now. It's beyond me. I don't care who you vote for, what you think politically. That's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And it just upsets me.
Thanks, Andy. I just have a couple items, just a reminder to the staff as well as the city council. We'll be holding Angie and Dana's performance reviews at the first meeting in October. You should have received an email from Sherry Baccaro from Human Resources with the forms. If you don't mind getting those back to me sooner than later, I would appreciate it. I've received maybe 3 So we've got a ways to go here from staff as well. Chief sent his in, thank you very much. Secondly, I just wanted to clarify, Andy, since it was your motion on the Sustainable Tourism Master Plan, did you leave the public hearing open?
I did not leave the public hearing open, but we certainly could.
Can we do that?
I mean, I don't, or if we would call for or advertise for another one at in the future, I don't know that we necessarily need to leave it open.
Just a question for Angie, how would we go about that? The thought being if there are amendments made to the document, understanding we wanted to get something in the pipeline so they could get to work on the education and outreach, but we still want to provide the public the opportunity to comment.
I do believe it's passed, but I think if you guys want to, reserve the right when amendments come out to reopen the public hearing.
Okay, great. Frank, comment?
Well, I just had a thought. I mean, once upon a time, in a dark number of years ago, there was a standing agenda item called the budget during the recession. Does it make sense for us to have a standing agenda item or a public comment item on our agenda for the next 2 months that says soliciting comments for sustainable tourism, to make people understand that we still want their comments? That might be a way to continue to keep it top of mind and remind ourselves that we still want more comments on this thing, so we can solicit those and maybe change this document if it's necessary. But that's just a thought. I think that might be a way for us to, again, keep it top of mind and just leave it in that kind of a form.
I don't see any harm to that, but I'll defer to Michelle and Dana.
I think with the idea that the committee's extended, it might be a good idea to request the public comment to start at the committee level and then move it up to the council at the right time. And the only reason I think is every time we come to that item, you might just have written comment or no comment. And so I think at the committee level, there'll be discussions being had about those amendments that need to be made. It's just a recommendation, I guess, for myself.
I mean, I guess my only comment was, I have to say, of all the things I've been involved in the city, we probably had one of the more robust public processes and better participation than almost anything I've ever seen. I think, Heidi, we had over 600 respondents to the poll that we sent out. Or was that your poll that we had 600 respondents to? I can't remember. I mean, yeah, it was a ton, and I mean, when we had our several open houses, particularly the World Cafe one, I mean, we had probably 150 people here for that. And I mean, there was a whole heck of a lot of public comment included in this plan from a very broad spectrum of the community, so.
We also had a survey at the farmer's market
Yep.
that was conducted through the national or the state tourism that was a part of our data collection also.
Yeah, now, as far as comment on the actual finished plan, I'm not sure how many people have had the opportunity to read it and how many people would actually read 141 pages of it and how many people would come in here and have comment on it. So I guess that's where I would see it, but there was a lot of public comment, and I think the committee did a very good job of, and which is why it was kind of a hard thing to do, because we had all of that opinion come in, and unlike some people in the audience tonight, I think we did a pretty good job of digesting all of that and hopefully produced a sausage that everybody liked the flavor of, so. But anyway, but I'm not opposed to that by any means, so.
Sure. I just throwing it out there, whatever we want to do.
I just think, when I think about process, Frank, it would seem more appropriate, in my opinion, for those comments to start with the standing committee and then back to the council, perhaps once those amendments are made and they bring a refresh back for our consideration, at which time we could then open the public hearing.
I think it's great.
Does that sound okay to the council?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, good point, Michelle and Dana. Did someone have their hand up? Ben?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think that I'm glad the committee is continuing, and I think that, and they're willing to do that. And the next part of this, which is distilling the action items down, I think is really important. And I think maybe it might be nice if it came back here once that was done.
Yep.
And then we can discuss it further then.
Okay. That's all I had. Anything further from the council or staff for that matter?
John, I just had one question with regards to the emergency ordinance. Is there any, it seems like at least in the first couple meetings, there might be more people that need help troubleshooting than whoever is running the meeting can handle. Is there a possibility to have an extra person around to help with that?
Yeah, I
I'm
think,
sensitive to the I am sensitive to the comment that it's going to be difficult for some people to participate. And I'm sorry, I should have brought this up earlier, but.
that's okay. I think what we will have is we will have a document that has very step-by-step instructions this time, instead of just linking you to WebEx's instructions on how to use it. But I believe we could have Tanya stay on along with Chris to just have an additional IT person for the first couple meetings. I don't see that as a problem.
And Dana and John, we need to make sure that everybody knows that they can still participate by phone, even if they can't or participate. They can still call in to a toll-free number that will allow them to continue to hear everything and hear everybody and participate. All those things.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks, Dana. On that note, Steve, did you have something? No, I saw you reaching for your mic, sorry. On that note, thanks everyone, we are adjourned.
Thanks.